Hello, everyone. Dry Fly Pro David Brenna here. Today, we're going to do a very simple project, and it's designed to help beginning fly tyers understand the ropes of all kinds of flies. The vehicle I'm going to use to do that is a classic Catskill pattern. And when I say classic Catskill pattern, I'm not talking about the hundreds that have actual names to them. Everything from the Quill Gordon to the Hendrickson, to all kinds. What I'm going to do is just show you the basics of that fly using two different materials. I will not put wings on the fly, and I'll explain that in a little bit. And the purpose is to give the new fly tyer an opportunity to understand things like hook size, proportion, material placement, and kind of the order or the sequence that you go through to tie a fly. So we're going to jump right in it. I'm going to try to keep it as short as I possibly can. And you know, I'm such a talker that Lord knows whether that's going to work out or not, but I'm going to give it a try. So let's just pop over to the bench here. And we're going to start with a size 12 standard dry fly hook. This is a TMCO that I'm using. It's a TMC 100. I've already smashed the barb, and I think I said it's a size 12. So I'm just going to place that into the vise, and then I'm going to begin showing you what materials I'm going to use to make this pattern. The first material is some hackle from not a neck, but a saddle. Saddles are interesting, and primarily because they're bred specifically. It's a rooster, and the feathers that come off of a saddle are very similar in size and color to all the other feathers on that saddle. When you get into understanding grading, you'll begin to understand some of the parts that matter about grading. So I'm going to take my tying thread. I'm going to get it started on the hook. One of the things that becomes important about understanding hook size is to understand the parts of the hook. So there's a shank at the top, the eye, obviously, the bend, the point, and what we call the curve. And we use the curve, which is the gap, which is between the shank and the point, as a measuring piece so that we can have some consistency in how we tie flies like this. So the first thing I'm doing is I'm putting some tail fibers on this. It's the same material as on the saddle, but it has a little coarser fibers than the regular part of the saddle. The regular part of the saddle here, I will be stripping off the extra barbels and cutting it for use in the front of the fly. Next, I'm going to take some dubbing. If you've looked at my video on simple dubbing, you know that I do a very straightforward approach to dubbing. I take out a very small chunk of dubbing. This is actually a little too much. And I twist it in such a way that I form a shape. And it's tapered on each end. And then I take one of those ends, I trim it so that it's not loose and unmanageable. And then rather than try to twist the dubbing directly to the tying thread, I actually anchor the dubbing on the hook with the tying thread. And then realizing that this is very delicate now, you could pull this loose and have to start over again very without much difficulty at all. But now that I'm twisting it and it's already anchored on the hook, it makes it much easier to manage. Now, you can do this without the rotary vise, but since I have a rotary vise, I'm going to do it by wrapping this hook as evenly as I can. And again, notice that I'm trying to create the proportion that I think is right for this particular fly. I'm going to go back a little bit, and then that is going to be good. That shows the thorax, which is what I want. And now I'm ready to essentially finish this fly. Got my brown hackle. And I'm going to secure that. And then I'm going to start wrapping the hackle around the shank of the hook. Now I try really hard to get the front smooth part of the hackle, the one that when you pull it off the saddle, you'll see that there's a glossy side and a less glossy side. And I try to use this consistently with the patterns I tie, but it's not necessarily required. Notice another thing. If you look carefully, you'll see that the barbels, individual barbels, when mounted on this hook, are 1.5 times the length of the hook gap. That's a pretty standard measurement. I'm going to pull some of these fibers back to try to get them out of the way. Now I'm going to trim the hackle, and believe it or not, finish this up with a whip finish. And notice there are no wings on this pattern. And I'll tell you why. A lot of the early fly tyers in the United States, in the Catskill Mountains, mostly led by a gentleman named Theodore Gordon, would tie wings made out of a variety of materials. One of the more popular ones being the feathers of a wood duck, and this is a wood duck breast feather. And they would make those wings stand up split. Now, here's my problem with that. The only time that a mayfly splits their wings is if they're about to take off. So a fish sees a fly with split wings, he has a pretty clear understanding that he needs to get to that fly immediately, or it will be off. So that's all there is. If you pay attention to how to tie the proportions of a standard dry fly with hackle, tail, and body, you will begin to understand the vast variety of flies that are possible. Not all of them have a hackle like this. Not all of them have 1.5 size the gap of the hackle. Some are paratied, that is a post, and then you wrap the hackle around the post. So there's lots of variety. But as a beginner, if you work on tying this fly, and you can choose your own colors if you have a preference, try to do it as often as you can until you get a fly that is proportional to what this looks like. In other words, the same. And it's of great value to know that you can tie just about any fly, and depending on the hook size and the kind of fly that you're trying to tie, you can adjust your materials and your method accordingly. So that's all there is. I hope you enjoy the video. And please subscribe and like after you've given it a look. Thanks.